This is probably the first time you're hearing about this news, so I urge you to stay until the end before talking about it with your friends, because every detail matters. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. The Jeddah night was never quiet, but that evening it was different. It felt like the whole circuit was holding its breath, like the walls themselves were listening. Beneath the glowing lights and shimmering tarmac, something almost supernatural was building. Not tension, voltage. A charge in the air, invisible yet unmistakable, crawling across every mechanic's skin, pulsing through every driver's heartbeat. Fans thought they were watching a routine second practice run. They couldn't have been more wrong. What began as a simple setup session twisted into a cataclysm that left jaws unhinged and hearts racing in disbelief. A near 300 km/h high-speed collision between Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc that sent shockwaves through the paddock, shattered any sense of normalcy, and tore through the illusion of control like a storm ripping roofs off in a hurricane. By the time the accident unfolded, the atmosphere had already begun to warp. Hamilton had just logged a sector so fast it turned screens purple. Not because he was chasing lap times, but because Mercedes was deep in experimentation. He was adjusting switches, toggling maps, analyzing traction behavior. Bonington, his engineer, was flooding his earpiece with instructions, managing battery deployment, requesting clutch bite data, suggesting changes to corner entry torque. Lewis wasn't driving fast, he was operating. He had become a rolling lab on wheels, threading through the circuit like a machine wrapped in flesh. He knew traffic was behind, but likely didn't expect anyone to approach like a missile. And behind him, Charles Leclerc was that missile, a red bullet with fire in his eyes. After a frustrating run plagued by traffic, yellow flags, and radio chaos, Charles was beyond patience. Every lap had been compromised. Every corner had been congested. Now he was out for blood, or at least redemption. His engineer gave him a heads-up, car ahead, Hamilton. 2-second gap. Should be coasting. But Charles had heard that before. Too many times. This wasn't just another lap. This was war paint time. As he unleashed his SF-24 through the fast left-handers, the V6 screamed in agony, turbo shrieking like a banshee, chassis glued to the asphalt like a predator hunting prey. He was never going to lift. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. As he screamed out of turn 17, DRS wide open, the car seemed to grow fangs. The speed was ferocious. The commitment, suicidal. He saw the Mercedes ahead, swaying gently across the track in tire prep rhythm, and something in Charles snapped. Whether he expected Lewis to duck offline, whether he hoped his rival would flinch, or whether his frustration boiled over into a decision fueled by fury, we'll never truly know. But what we do know is that Hamilton, lost in settings, moved left. And Leclerc was already there. The moment their trajectories converged was an explosion. Not an impact, a detonation of physics and fate. At speeds so insane they defy comprehension, Charles's front left corner rammed into Lewis' rear right with enough force to make the track itself groan. The Ferrari lurched upward violently, the nose dipping and the rear snapping into the air like a tossed coin. The sound, metal on metal, rubber disintegrating, carbon tearing, was more scream than crash. Debris rained down like shrapnel from a war zone. The SF-24 spiraled violently, striking the wall with terrifying violence, rebounding, bouncing, twisting into a disfigured lump of carbon. Sparks poured from the floor like fireworks gone rogue. The halo bent from the force. A wheel assembly ripped clean from its tether. The car died in the TechPro barrier, steam rising like a final breath. Hamilton's fate wasn't any calmer. His W15, thrown into a vicious yaw, spun like a helicopter blade across the racing line, slammed the inside barrier, bounced once, then twisted to a halt, rear wing gone, floor exposed, side pods torn open like a ripped page from a nightmare. Time froze. Then sirens. Then screams. Then silence. Pit walls exploded into chaos. Onboard cameras blinked to static. Engineers gasped. Team principals leapt from their chairs. In the Ferrari garage, mechanics stood like statues, mouths open, eyes wide with horror. In the Mercedes side, a crew member dropped a laptop. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And then, the world held its breath. Seconds later, a miracle. Lewis, bruised but conscious, unlatched his belts. He climbed out, limping, stunned. Dust covered his suit like ash. His visor lifted slowly. He didn't wave. He just looked. 1,000-yard stare. He turned to his wrecked machine, as if trying to understand what had happened, why fate had chosen that moment, that place. From the other end, Charles emerged too. Staggered. Visibly rattled. He pulled off his gloves, hurled them toward the cockpit, and walked away from the wreck like a man trying to escape his own shadow. His chest heaved. His expression? Fury and heartbreak fused into one. No eye contact between the two titans. No words. Just scorched ground and emotional wreckage. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. And then, the storm moved online. Social media caught fire like a forest blaze in high winds. Fans screamed betrayal. Memes flooded timelines. Experts speculated like courtroom prosecutors. Clips were slowed, enhanced, rewound, dissected. Was it a brake test? Was it deliberate? Was it a misjudgment, a team error, a ticking time bomb finally going off? Everyone had a theory. Nobody had the truth. Inside the FIA control room, stewards stared at data with beads of sweat on their foreheads. Telemetry showed throttle traces, steering angles, brake pressure. Radios were pulled. Analysis was launched. Protest was brewing. A tribunal of motorsport drama had begun. Toto Wolff smashed a pen. Fred Vasseur barked into a phone in 3 different languages. Martin Brundle called it the most volatile moment of the hybrid era. And Crofty's voice cracked with disbelief as he called the replay for the 5th time. "You cannot write this," he whispered. But it wasn't a script. It was real. Ugly. Beautiful. Terrifyingly human. This wasn't just 2 cars colliding. It was decades of rivalry, pride, ambition, strategy, mistakes, ego, all detonating in one horrible, unforgettable second. No flags, no podiums, no champagne, just raw, unfiltered chaos. And in the ashes of that unforgettable night, one thing became clear. In Formula One, no lap is ever just a lap. No practice is ever just a test. And no rivalry stays dormant forever. Yellow turned crimson in the blink of an eye. What started as a routine caution morphed into pure, unfiltered disaster. Barriers buckled. Debris spiraled into the sky like a hailstorm of carbon fiber daggers. The impact sent shockwaves down the pit lane. Crew members froze, headsets slipping off, mouths wide open. Spectators dropped their drinks, some screamed, others covered their faces, unable to look away. It wasn't just another crash, it was a scene ripped from a nightmare. You could feel the violence of it in your bones. Track officials bolted from their posts, leaping over guardrails, shoving photographers aside. The air was thick with smoke, oil, and something else, dread. Both cars lay crippled, their silhouettes barely recognizable, twisted and warped like modern art sculptures made from speed and destruction. For what felt like hours, though it was mere seconds, there was no movement, no motion. Just the eerie flicker of fire near Hamilton's side pod and the slow hiss of coolant leaking onto the scorched asphalt. Then, from the chaos, a flicker. Hamilton's arm jerked, weak but determined. He was alive. With visible effort, he clawed at his restraints, his hands slick with sweat and blood. He fought the cockpit like it was a prison. Foam padding from the halo came off in chunks as he shoved it aside. His visor was cracked, the lower part of his race suit charred and stuck to his skin. The crowd gasped when he emerged, barely standing, swaying like a man who had just stepped out of a war zone. The knees of his suit were ripped, exposing burns. His gloves? Torn to threads. Fingers twitching, he dropped to one knee, coughed violently, then forced himself upright with the last of his strength. A second movement, this time from the red wreck. Leclerc. He pushed open what was left of the cockpit cover, staggered, and nearly fell. His helmet was still on, tilting at an odd angle. When he took it off, his face was pale, but his eyes were full of fire. Blood trickled down his forearm, dripping steadily from a cut deep enough to stain the white of his underlayer. His elbow looked dislocated, hanging unnaturally. And still, he walked. Slowly limping, toward the escape road, toward the medics. Until Hamilton turned. You could feel the tension snap. The moment their eyes locked, it was no longer about the crash. It was about everything that had come before. Years of near misses, of podium shade, of subtle digs in press conferences. Every unspoken insult was now boiling on the surface. Hamilton stormed toward him, fists clenched, teeth gritted. "You're reckless. You never check your mirrors. You think you're the center of the grid." Leclerc didn't flinch. He advanced too, his expression dark, jaw tight, voice shaking with rage. "You parked it on the apex like you owned it. This isn't your racetrack, Lewis." They were nose to nose, breathing fire. Marshals were yelling. Medics hesitated, unsure whether to treat or intervene. Reporters were filming with shaky hands, capturing what no one believed was real. And then, Leclerc struck. He shoved Hamilton with the weight of every grudge, every slight, every second of suppressed fury. The crowd exploded. Hamilton staggered backward, but didn't fall. He came back swinging, not a punch, but a brutal push to Leclerc's shoulder that sent a sharp crack echoing through the tension-filled air. "You touch me again," he spat, "and I swear." But Leclerc didn't hear the rest. Because his foot hit a slick patch of spilled fluid, and gravity betrayed him. He slipped violently, spinning backward and colliding hard against a jagged piece of front wing. A scream tore from his lungs, a horrible guttural sound that cut through the chaos. The wingtip had slashed through his race suit like butter, leaving a vicious wound across his shoulder blade. The skin split wide, blood gushing instantly. His body curled in pain, spasming uncontrollably. That was it. All hell broke loose. Medical staff stormed in, radioing for a chopper within seconds. Someone tossed a thermal blanket over Leclerc, while another applied pressure to the wound. Hamilton stood nearby, visibly shaking, breathing like he'd just run a marathon with a shattered rib. FIA delegates surrounded him, demanding explanations he wasn't ready to give. In the stands, parents hugged their kids. Some fans were crying. Others were shouting, screaming, throwing insults from every corner. Social media was detonating. Screens lit up with words like violence, meltdown, scandal. Every single news outlet dropped their planned coverage. F1 wasn't trending, it was on fire. And the worst part? This wasn't just a racing incident. It wasn't just adrenaline. It was personal, deep, ugly, raw. Two titans of the sport, reduced to wounded gladiators in front of millions. Not just injured bodies, but shattered egos, mangled pride, and years of unresolved conflict laid bare for the world to see. There was no winner, only wreckage, and blood on the tarmac. Just seconds after the deafening crunch of carbon fiber colliding at high speed, the world of Formula One stopped breathing. Charles Leclerc, pale and grimacing, was immobilized by medics as they rushed to stabilize him, his right arm awkwardly bent, a clear sign of a serious shoulder injury. His suit was torn at the collarbone, stained with fresh blood from a deep, jagged wound. Spectators in the grandstands gasped. Social media exploded. Commentators couldn't even find the words. Lewis Hamilton emerged moments later, limping and visibly rattled, one eye already beginning to swell. Blood dripped from a sharp cut just above his brow, likely caused by the brutal jolt against the halo support. He paused, bent slightly, catching his breath, then waved off assistance with a defiant shake of his head. The image was instantly iconic, a battered champion walking away from wreckage that could have ended his career. The pit lane was suspended in eerie stillness. Crew members stood frozen, headsets hanging at their sides, as if waiting for someone to wake them from a nightmare. Team principals whispered into radios. Even the ever-busy tire technicians stood idle, wide-eyed and hollow-faced. Behind the garage doors, chaos took over. Ferrari's PR team went into overdrive, drafting statements and compiling a dossier of camera angles and telemetry. The accusation? That Hamilton had grossly misjudged the racing space and acted without spatial awareness. Legal advisors were looped in before the medical team even finished treating Leclerc. Every second counted, not just for health, but for blame. Mercedes fired back with military precision. A detailed technical breakdown, complete with data overlays, throttle traces, brake pressure graphs, and high-resolution stills, was presented to the FIA stewards in under an hour. Their defense was brutal. Leclerc had knowingly executed a high-risk maneuver in a location universally regarded as a danger zone. The implication? That he didn't just take a chance, he took aim. The media room was a powder keg. Journalists sprinted to their laptops. Emails flew. Breaking news banners popped up across every motorsport site within minutes. When Toto Wolff appeared, the silence was chilling. His glare could have melted steel. His voice? Steady, but venomous. "This isn't racing anymore," he said. "This is ego over ethics. And it has to stop." He wasn't done. "I've seen contact before. But this? This was personal. Someone wanted to make a point, with carbon and with blood." Minutes later, Fred Vasseur arrived, furious, pacing, face flushed with rage. "What more proof do they need?" he shouted. "Do we need a body before we act? This is a disgrace. A complete mockery of safety standards." Meanwhile, in the confines of the paddock medical suite, the reality of the crash was becoming even more horrifying. Leclerc's injuries were worse than initially feared, not only a dislocated shoulder, but torn ligaments and a deep laceration dangerously close to a major artery. He was given morphine. Yet even under sedation, he whispered he saw me. He didn't care. Hamilton was bruised but determined. With ribs strapped and cuts treated, he was already reviewing video on a team tablet before the medics finished their checklist. One witness reported hearing him say, "I knew this would happen. I told them. And now here we are." What followed next was not just a media firestorm, it was an all-out war. Insiders close to the FIA leaked that emergency meetings were being scheduled for the following morning. Certain stewards were demanding an immediate suspension. Others pushed back, fearing the political fallout. Sponsors began calling. Legal teams were briefed. The paddock wasn't just tense, it was on the brink of implosion. Whispers turned to roars. This had been building for months. Some say it started in Zandvoort, when Leclerc made a thinly veiled dig about drivers who think they're untouchable. Others claim it was Bahrain, where an off-camera argument between the two nearly became physical, only stopped by an FIA official who placed himself between them. And then there was the Monaco meeting. Confidential, of course, but now widely rumored. Hamilton's representatives allegedly approached Ferrari about a post-Mercedes future. Leclerc wasn't just unwelcoming, he was openly hostile. He reportedly said, bringing him in would be a betrayal. We'd be hiring drama wrapped in a helmet. The collapse was inevitable. What began as rivalry became vendetta. Neither man willing to yield. Neither team backing down. And now? Now the battleground wasn't the circuit, it was the sport itself. Every team principal was watching. Every driver was on edge. This wasn't about two cars. It was about legacy, identity, control. Mechanics whispered about tension in both garages even before the race. Mercedes engineers mentioned a bad vibe during final prep. One insider claimed Hamilton stared at Leclerc's car in the garage for nearly 2 minutes without saying a word. On the other side, a Ferrari mechanic reportedly refused to fist bump a Mercedes staffer moments before lights out. Now, the championship narrative has changed entirely. Points? Titles? They suddenly feel secondary. What matters now is the fallout. Penalties. Sanctions. Maybe even disqualifications. The FIA is under fire, and no decision will go unchallenged. Fans have taken sides. Social media has become a battleground of blame and fury. The 2025 season didn't just take a dramatic turn, it crashed headfirst into chaos. What remains? Wreckage, bloodstains, and a grudge that may never be buried. And as for Hamilton and Leclerc, they're no longer just rivals. They're enemies, fueled by pride, pain, and an unspoken promise. This is far from over. The internet didn't just blow up. It combusted into a digital inferno the second the chaos unfolded in Jeddah. Within seconds, global feeds were overflowing with shock, disbelief, and fury. Not even a major world crisis could have pushed it out of the spotlight. From fan cams to broadcast replays, every millisecond of that crash, every shudder of carbon fiber, every twitch of a hand on the wheel, was dissected, magnified, and looped endlessly. TikTok became a war zone. X, formerly Twitter, was a battlefield. Instagram stories were dominated by fire emojis, side-by-sides of Leclerc's furious stare, and Hamilton's blood-smeared visor. The internet was absolutely drenched in speculation, raw emotion, and pure gasoline-fueled drama. Hashtag F1 meltdown, hashtag desert collision, and hashtag Hamilton Leclerc explosion erupted onto the trending page like grenades, instantly topping every major social platform. Reddit's F1 forum saw 200 new threads in 15 minutes. Fans were comparing telemetry graphs like stock analysts, matching driver breathing patterns to onboard footage, slowing down Hamilton's exhale as he climbed out of the car, trying to interpret whether it was rage, regret, or revenge. Some claimed to spot a tear behind Leclerc's visor. Others insisted it was sweat. No one could agree. Everyone was screaming. A separate leaked video, filmed covertly behind the curtains of the Ferrari medical unit, caught Charles with veins bulging in his neck, snarling at his race engineer, "He's done. You hear me? He's done." The audio had the intensity of a final boss in a video game. Within minutes, it was overlaid with dramatic orchestra music and uploaded to YouTube with titles like "The Moment Everything Changed." Meanwhile, Lewis, bruised, visor smeared crimson, chest rising and falling with adrenaline, was spotted muttering "selfish little prince" as he handed his helmet to a crew member. He didn't look at anyone. Didn't say another word. Just walked away, jaw like stone. Mainstream media couldn't keep up. Sky Sports scrambled to get pundits on camera for emergency segments. ESPN hosted a late-night live stream. BBC sent push notifications that looked like war headlines. "Unprecedented clash in Jeddah," read one. Another simply said, "F1 has changed forever." Documentaries were pitched on the spot. Streaming platforms smelled blood and money. Netflix executives probably had their phones ringing at 3 a.m. Brand executives were in full panic mode. A top-tier energy drink sponsor threatened to pull out unless things were de-escalated immediately. A luxury watch partner reportedly suspended promotional materials for both drivers. Corporate stakeholders weren't just worried, they were furious. Internal emails leaked. One exec wrote, "We're not sponsoring street fights in racing suits." PR departments were melting down in real time, scrambling to stop the fallout from becoming a global scandal. Inside Liberty Media HQ, the atmosphere was nuclear. A private conference call with FIA leaders turned hostile. Reports claim someone slammed a fist on the table and shouted, "We're a sport, not a soap opera." Except now, it was a soap opera. A high-octane, globally broadcast, blood-stained, fire-sparking saga with billions of eyes locked in. There were whispers of emergency rule changes, behavioral fines, and possibly, just possibly, race suspensions. But nothing compared to the image that froze the planet. The pit lane was almost silent. Mechanics spoke in whispers. Lights dimmed. Then Charles appeared. Pale, silent, wrapped in gauze and slumped in a wheelchair, his sling immobile like a flag of surrender. His jaw clenched. His eyes cold. He stared at nothing. Not the reporters. Not the cameras. Not even the teammate who nervously trailed behind him. The footage spread faster than anything that night. It felt like a scene straight out of a tragedy. Minutes later, Lewis emerged. Alone. No entourage. No umbrella. Just him, dragging his race boots like a soldier returning from a battlefield. He paused in front of the Ferrari garage. Under a tarp, barely visible in the shadows, lay the shattered remains of Leclerc's car. A single red shard peeked out from beneath the black cover like a ghost. Hamilton stood there, completely still, for at least 10 seconds. No one dared speak. Then, with a deep exhale that echoed through the paddock, he turned and disappeared into the darkness. By sunrise, the incident wasn't just viral, it had invaded culture. Celebrities were reenacting the moment. DJs remixed the crash audio into EDM anthems. Kids on Roblox were role-playing the crash. A Hollywood agent tweeted, "This needs to be a film. Now." Political commentators were using the rivalry as a metaphor for international diplomacy. TikTokers cosplayed as pit crew members giving alternate endings. AI-generated deepfakes of a post-crash confrontation racked up millions of views in hours. It was more than a race. More than a crash. It was raw myth-making in real time. 2 gladiators. 1 collision. 0 apologies. And the world? The world couldn't look away. No sanctions. No reprimands. No official consequences. Just a soft diplomatic slap on the wrist disguised as warnings. The FIA statement? A sanitized blend of bureaucratic jargon, mutual error, unclear communication, and rare situational complexity. But anyone who understands racing knows, Those carefully chosen words were a curtain hiding something much more explosive. The true cost wasn't measured in grid positions or penalty points. It was measured in broken trust, mental scars, and a rivalry now too toxic to ignore. What really happened in Jeddah wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a psychological detonation. Two titans of the sport, once perhaps united by mutual respect, now stare each other down with a kind of intensity that can only be born from betrayal. The relationship is scorched. Irreparably. And from this moment on, every shared piece of tarmac becomes a pressure cooker, boiling with revenge, pride, and the unbearable weight of history. The desert didn't just witness a Grand Prix, it witnessed a rupture in the very fabric of F1 harmony. In the paddock, whispers spread like wildfire. The tension between the two drivers didn't need words. It screamed through the silence. Their body language during team briefings told the whole story. Arms folded, eyes avoiding, jawlines tight with suppressed fury. Engineers exchanged nervous glances. PR managers rehearsed damage control statements. Something monumental had cracked open. What had once been a tactical game of milliseconds and telemetry became a brutal test of nerve. The entire garage atmosphere shifted from focus to fear. Every time these two line up beside each other now, the air becomes electric, ready to snap. Even the start lights seem slower, stretched out by anticipation so thick it feels physical. Every apex is a trap. Every exit line, a challenge. There's no longer a margin for error, not just because of speed, but because of emotion. The dynamic has shifted forever. Teammates? Rivals? Now they're psychological assassins, armed with data, precision, and unresolved tension. They won't speak it aloud, but it's there in every overtake attempt, every defensive maneuver. An unspoken war. A rivalry too personal to be contained by a mere racetrack. And the world is addicted. Viewers don't just tune in now to see who wins. They tune in to see when the next flashpoint hits. When the next silent insult will be hurled at 320 kilometers per hour. This is no longer about trophies or standings. It's about dominance, intimidation, mental supremacy. Fans know it. Commentators feel it. Rival teams can smell it. And the fire is only growing hotter. Social media caught on instantly. Fan theories, frame-by-frame breakdowns, radio message conspiracies, it all exploded. The incident was replayed like a thriller movie, with everyone choosing a side. The sport's political underbelly was exposed in real time. Journalists asked questions they weren't supposed to. Former champions hinted at deeper issues on air. No one could look away. And the drivers? They've crossed a threshold. This is now a grudge match unfolding in high definition every other Sunday. There's no going back. Not after Saudi. Not after the trust shattered like carbon fiber under contact. Every battle from here on will be laced with psychological warfare. Every moment in their mirrors will feel like a countdown to chaos. Forget professionalism. Forget sportsmanship. This is pride versus pride. Ego versus ego. A combustible cocktail of genius-level talent and emotional volatility. And in a sport where one wrong move ends races, or careers, this new reality is terrifying and addictive in equal measure. This is more than racing now. It's theater. It's mind games on a global scale. Every track they share becomes a coliseum. Every camera angle, a witness to the unraveling. What began as a technical incident has mutated into a saga. A wildfire fed by silence, fury, and the sheer unwillingness of either man to yield. And the question everyone's asking isn't if they'll clash again, it's when. Because it's coming. And this time, no one will be able to downplay it.